Season unfolds, like of course last night around 10 o'clock, JJ and I didn't know if we'd be here talking to you guys or on a plane headed to OKC for Game 5. That's just sort of how the nature of the season goes. But we're here and excited to be here to address your questions. I think in terms of the season, a lot to be proud of in terms of back-to-back 50-win seasons, but certainly nothing that we're satisfied about. This is a market with championship expectations, and now begins the process for leadership here, JJ, myself, to deconstruct the things in the season that went well, and then to look at the parts of the season that we can elevate and bring to the next level. And we're going to be incredibly process-oriented about that, working closely with the front office staff upstairs, with the coaching staff, to deliver a product and a roster next season that our Lakers fans can be incredibly excited about and honored by. So that work begins now for our partnership, now that JJ's head shifts from trying to beat a team to preparing for the offseason. Of course, myself, the amazing people that work upstairs, this is something we've been working on for months and are excited now to present and collaborate with Coach Redick and his staff around. But that process of deconstruction for us starts today after getting through what we did last night. In terms of the playoffs, I think we all know the playoffs are about matchups and about roster fullness. We ran into the defending champs. I'm very, very proud of how resilient our team was, how hard our guys fought. The results of the series, again, is never satisfactory. We're here to win and to win in those series. Having a less than full roster is never an excuse in this business. It's just a circumstance, and in this case, an adverse circumstance that came our way. But our job as leaders is when we face adverse circumstances is to learn from those and get stronger and better. And I think there's a lot to be proud of with how JJ and his staff led us through a first round series with a couple of our best players not available for most of the series. Beating the Rockets was great. And then having a series with OKC that there were moments in every game where you could see the competitive nature of this group and think to what it might have been if we were a full roster. So that's kind of our recap. We are grateful and honored to be here, to be leaders here, to do the work here, and to share our thoughts today with you guys who also work so hard to cover us and want to cover us accurately. So here to really take your questions about the season, the off season. I'll get on a plane when we're done with player exit meetings today, head to the combine. We have the 25th pick, and so the work around the draft is starting now. But wanted to meet with you guys first before all that begins. So thank you for being here.
Hey Rob, JJ's talked throughout the season just about how there have been almost different stages of it, where first it's without LeBron, and then Luka and Austin both missed significant time, obviously most recently with Luka. Is there a through line to what you saw as that these are the needs for this team moving forward, despite sort of how truncated that was, and with obviously with Luka at the centerpiece of that as you look to build a roster going into the offseason?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think I used the word deconstruction. We're going to be in the process of breaking all that down and learning from it and not rush to any judgments. I think our team and our roster had 3 quarterbacks on it in LeBron and Luka and Austin. And that's, in some sense, a luxury that we had different guys that can make plays in different parts of the season. And it also creates its own set of stuff for JJ to figure out when you have 3 players that can make plays. But I think all in all, an amazing job at fitting all of that together, and then the response of those players and playing different roles throughout the season and having an evolution themselves was incredibly impressive. And to me, it was just a sign of the humility of the individuals involved to make sacrifices and to play a certain way so that the team could have success and win.
And then one for JJ. I remember this time last year, you were kind of excited for that first off season, where you had a real off season to plan, to figure things out. Just how would you describe this whole year for you, the growth of it, and then now going into year 3, like how different that might be from the previous?
Yeah, I would say that accumulation of intrinsic knowledge. It can compound, and so the first off season I had as a head coach was not really an off season. It was building my coaching staff, building our systems, building our languages. Last off season I got to do some work, and I think I just said to Rob upstairs, the work that I did and the work that my staff did, it prepared us to be better coaches this year. And it allowed us, I think, to have a lot of growth. Part of my job is to make sure my players get better and make sure my players can perform, but it's also to make sure the 17 people that are up there are getting better too. And I think to a person, each one of them got better, and we're all excited about getting better this offseason and being in a position when next season starts to have another year of growth.
Rob, good morning. Your two longest tenured Lakers were arguably your two most important players in Game 92 last night, LeBron James and Austin Reeves. And not to publicly negotiate, but just, do you want both those guys back on the team next year?
Yeah, good morning, Dave. I'll sort of take them one at a time. I think in terms of LeBron, we probably haven't seen a player that has honored the game to the extent that he's honored the game. He's given so much to his teammates, to this organization, and the thing we want to do more than anything else is honor him back. And I think the first order of business there is allowing him to spend the time he needs to decide what his next step are. Does he want to play another year in the NBA? And that'll be, as he said to you guys last night, family time, I think time with his inner circle, and we just want to honor that for him. Of course, any team, including ours, would love to have LeBron James on their roster. That's a blessing in itself, just with what he does. In terms of Austin Reeves started his NBA odyssey actually with the Lakers on that court right over there. I remember it was a draft workout. In fact, I was talking to Austin last night. He was having a pregame meal talking about how drained and exhausted he was by the draft workout process, and that somehow he mustered up strength to have a great Lakers workout. I remember actually being here with my son on that court watching that, which is one of the turning points of getting him here, just that workout and how he approached it. But he started his journey here as a Laker and has made it very clear to us that he wants his journey to continue as a Laker. And we feel the same way. We want his odyssey to continue to unfold in the purple and gold. As you know, Dave, there's rules and timing to all of that, but I think both sides have made it abundantly clear that we want to work something out where he continues his prolific career here.
And JJ, that 16-2 stretch that you guys had from late February through the end of March, and we're juggling the three quarterbacks, I guess, as Rob said, it was clearly able to work. How do you feel about that core, getting a chance to coach that again?
I'll repeat what Rob said. Of course, we want that core to be back together. And I think Rob used the word humility, and each guy, I think, had to sacrifice at different points in the season and at different times. I also think for all three of those guys, and it's crazy to say that about LeBron too, but all three of those guys showed a lot of growth this year. And I think, a lot has been made about Luka's fitness level and his dedication to that. He was great throughout the season. He's still in fantastic shape 6 weeks after an injury. But he's also grown as a leader. I think that was one of the challenges coming into the season that we presented him with. He grew in that regard. Austin grew in that regard. LeBron, having to, not even having to, but being challenged to, and then volunteering to accept a different role in year 23. That is incredible growth. So, all three of those guys, I think we kind of hit the apex of that in that 16-2 stretch, and it showed what this group can do.
Good morning, guys. Rob, I feel like I could ask you about 8 different free agents on your roster, but instead of doing that, I want to ask you about the infrastructure and the ability to kind of reshape the front office this summer. What is the Lakers front office going to look like next year? Where are you guys at in that process? And I guess what are some of the, we know you hired Tony Bennett. What are some of the other kind of things that we can expect to see?
Yeah, great question, Dan. First, I think JJ and I are just so grateful to work under Jeannie's leadership and Mark Walter and just the energy he's brought to us to kind of build this out. We have already started that reconstruction and have made hires in our front office and continued to develop new technologies and new areas that we've turned on for the draft, for free agency. So a lot of the infrastructure is being built. I'll be headed to the combine. We will continue to staff out with assistant general manager positions. There's a couple of those that we're currently interviewing for and have done an extensive dive in that process. So those will be two key pillars that we'll add this offseason. And then working with Lon Rosen, who now is our president of business, as you guys saw, our G League team is relocating to a brand new, beautiful 10,000 seat arena in Coachella Valley. So what that does in our building is it opens up all of this space, and we have actually a space in the back where, working in collaboration with some of the Dodgers folks, we're bringing in a biomechanics lab, new movement labs, a recovery lab. Those things are super expensive to do and super thoughtful, but we're doing the planning with Lon and his team around that, and that construction is going to happen this off season. They're going to be redoing aspects of the court as well. So it's a full rebuild and retool, and it's adding to the great things that are already here, which have led to success, but elevating it and bringing it to the next level. So ongoing process that we'll be doing throughout the off season, probably hopefully culminating in and around the summer league in Vegas.
My second question for you, Rob. JJ, you're off the you guys have stuff that you haven't had access to this summer in terms of cap space, in terms of multiple draft picks that you can maneuver with. How do you feel about the level of optionality, and that's one of your favorite words, that you guys have this summer to get better? And do you see pathways potentially that if you do return Austin and LeBron, that you guys can still mold the roster in sort of the ways that best fit Luka?
Yeah, I think that is a really good, and the right word to use is optionality in this sort of double apron CBA. That's almost an effective hard cap. I think having the optionality to roster plan and roster build, there's several ways to do it. There's in the draft, there's through trades, where some teams are going to be trying to get off good players in this harsh system, and then there's through free agency. And we do, to your point, have the optionality to look at all those different avenues to get better. And the archetype of the roster that we want is going to be retrofitted around Luka and the things he needs. And clearly he's that leader and player for the future that we want to build the right way around.
Hello, JJ and Rob. When you look at Oklahoma City, how young and dynamic they are, how daunting of a task is it to build a team to compete with that?
Yeah, I think, listen, if you look around the playoffs right now, Brad, I think depth is really important. Athleticism and youth, and I think we have a lot of components of that on our roster, but we need to add to it. And I think those are some of the key North Stars that we need to look at. One of the players that they had last night that played really well, AJ Mitchell, they got in the second round, right? So there's ways to add to your roster if you commit to doing the hard work and commit to the process of adding the right pieces. And to the point I made with Dan, we'll be doing that through the draft, the free agency, through trades. And we've got to find a way to have a roster that can compete with any team in the NBA. That's what we do here.
JJ, just for you, often heard about coaches talk about their downtime reading books, going to seminars, talking to other coaches. Is there anything that you will do or have done this summer just to decompress and then look at reading something that might help you and your staff become better at what you do?
Yeah, we had a little bit of a book club last summer. I'm sure I'll over the next few days I'll come up with my reading list. My performance coach actually just wrote a book that came out and sent me a copy, so I'm on page 3. We'll figure out some time to do that. Honestly, the thing I'm looking for, and I'm not trying to be funny here, the thing I'm looking forward to the most is going to bed at 9:30 p.m. and just getting sleep and recalibrating my sleep cycle. That's what I'm looking forward to over the next week or so.
Good morning, Rob and JJ. I'll start with you, Rob. What is that communication process with Luka, knowing that he's kind of the North Star of this franchise right now? And has he communicated to the front office what he would like the team to look like going into next season?
Yeah, I think the key word is that's an ongoing collaborative process. It's not, hey, I want X, Y, and Z. So we're in constant communication with him and his team. I plan on seeing him before he takes off to go home and spend some time with his daughters. We're going to get together, I think, on Friday or Saturday. So ongoing dialogue. He's an incredible partner. His basketball IQ on the court is something we get to see, I think, as fans. JJ and I get to see his basketball knowledge in terms of other players in the league and the way he wants to play and who he wants to play with. His knowledge base is vast, and so those dives and collaborations with him are actually really inspirational. And he also does it in a way where he wants to do his job great, and he wants to let JJ do his job great and let me do my job great. So they really are productive conversations through that lens.
JJ, BT just asked a similar question to Rob, but I'm curious for you as a coach, when you see the depth that Oklahoma City was able to bring to that series, how would you like to see a roster constructed? Do you want, you've kind of stuck to 8-9 man rotations for a lot of the year. Do you want to be able to extend into a 10th, 11th man where you're comfortable, like OKC was able to do?
It's a great question. I think, first of all, I repeat what I said last night. I'm just grateful for all the guys that are on this year's team and the work that they put in, their commitment to trying to win this year. I don't necessarily view depth as a rotation thing, though. Whether you play 8, 9, whether you play 11, 12, you need to have depth, and that depth typically comes in sort of the roster spots 10 through 15. And whether that's internal development, draft, trade, free agency, whatever it is, we need to build depth beyond just an 8 or 9 man rotation, because you're naturally going to have injuries. You sit there and you plan all summer for how your team's supposed to play and how your team's supposed to look, and I maybe 5 games out of the 90, what did we play, 92 games? Maybe 5 games out of the 92 games, it was something that I had planned over the off season. A lot of times you're in a timeout and you're like looking and you're like, I never expected this line to be together, So it really is about just building that depth. We can figure out as coaches, we can figure out what a rotation looks like. But you look at OKC's roster, you look at San Antonio's roster, those guys, they have 13 high-level rotation players minimum. And that's a luxury to have in the NBA, and it's one of the reasons those teams are really good.
Morning, guys. Rob, you talked about at the trade deadline, you wanted obviously to be able to see Luka, Austin, and LeBron together. At that time, you hadn't gotten to see a lot. Now that the entire season is played out, you had that March that was really successful. What was your kind of takeaway from that trio together, and what does that kind of inform you about the way this roster could be built in the future?
Yeah, at the trade deadline, obviously we added Luke Kennard. We think the spacing that he brought, Rui coming on and providing, incredible shooting down the stretch and in the playoffs really opened up sort of the way we wanted to play and JJ wanted to coach by adding shooting to the lineup. And I think that March stretch, to your point, was a powerful and strong data point, proof of concept to go 16-2, to play as good as any team in the NBA during that stretch. So that window and that period of time will be a part of our deconstruction as we figure out how to retrofit things around our primary pieces.
And JJ, you talked about Luka being a leader. We've talked about it many times this season, but now that you're on the back end, were there ways that Luka emerged as a leader that maybe surprised you, or what new parts of his leadership showed themselves as the season went on?
I think he made a commitment, very early on, going back to last offseason, with just the off-court relationship development, part of being a leader and part of getting people to play hard with you and play alongside you is developing relationships, and he was very committed this year to developing those relationships both on and off the court. I think him being more vocal in game, in film sessions, whatever it looked like. And I do think, again, going back to last season and the trade and just the disruption that caused, and I think in some ways confusion. I don't think we got the best version of Luka, the person. He was great, but he was phenomenal this year as a teammate and a leader, and obviously as a player. I mean, the guy had a tier 1 season relative to the rest of the league.
Morning, Rob. Morning, JJ. Rob, you first. You mentioned, I think, AJ Mitchell from OKC about just a player who stood out from this past series. You mentioned that's a second-round pick. OKC's developed. They have several guys that they've drafted or signed, undrafted, and developed. How do you, I guess, see the player development resources with this franchise, and what work, I guess, this offseason do you want to, I guess, invest in that going forward over the next few months?
Yeah, I think in this salary cap system, player development is going to be a huge thing to lean into for success ultimately. And we've seen that. I think you could look at veteran players that have come here and developed. Like, I'll use Rui as an example. I think when we traded for him and who he is now, he's a different player, and that's a testament to JJ's player development staff. I see Coach Bo, sitting here today. He's poured in so much there. So I think there could be development of veteran players too that are still young. I think we have Adu Thiero is another example who had some bumps with his health this year, but once he got healthy, JJ trusted him enough to put him in a playoff series and get some big rebounds and make plays. So those are just examples. We have to continue to find young talent and develop them. In terms of the resources that Jeannie and Mark are providing for us, that's an area that they really want us to grow. We see that, of course, with our brother-sister organization, with the Dodgers. They've invested a lot in player development and have done it so well. And so that's a conversation JJ and I are going to start to have in terms of, in addition to Dan's question about building out the front office infrastructure, are there additional resources he needs on a coaching staff to lean into player development and that arc and what it can mean. But your question is a really good one, and it's a very important area for us to have Lakers excellence in.
JJ, for you, we talked throughout the season about the challenge of having so many guys with uncertainty about their future, whether it's free agency, what have you. What helped you and your coaching staff navigate those challenges?
Well, I think it started with just embracing the challenge. And part of embracing the challenge is pouring into your players. And LeBron talks all the time about living in the moment. And whether I used the organism thing last night, we're all cells in that organism, and we got to pour in and try to make sure every cell is healthy and thriving. And I think that's what my staff did this year with all our guys. And so I think in some ways our players responded to that. I know I had a great conversation with DA last night after the game about our relationship and his relationship with my staff and how important it was for him, and how much of a positive experience he had this year with myself and our staff. So that's what it was, just embracing the challenge and pouring into our guys.
Good morning, Rob and JJ. JJ, in what ways do you think you've grown as a coach? And Rob, what observations do you have?
I think I've grown in a lot of ways, but I think it would be I think it would be unfair for me to just talk about that. I mean, you probably get a better answer from who's here, St. Jean, J. Rod, Bo, Rob. It's my players that were here last year. I don't know. I will say the confidence level, particularly in game, of being able to have clarity. I think that was a real area of growth this year. Believe it or not, although again it gets clipped out every time, I think my emotional control was better. Yeah. I don't think I made any snarky comments to you guys all season. Maybe one, Dave, maybe one. Never happened. And truthfully, this is why I love coaching, because there's always room for growth, and I'm excited. You know, I wish the offseason had ended on June 21st or whatever date, you know, the finals is over, but I'm excited for another opportunity to grow this offseason and again prepare myself for another year of growth as a coach.
Yeah, I remember, I think you,
Yeah.
did you want me to?
Of course.
I think JJ and I are similarly wired in that we remember details and conversations. I remember one of our first conversations, he brought up this concept of duality. There's a great, you talked about books, there's a great author, Richard Rohr, who writes on this, but JJ and I were talking about a book, and one of the things that's amazing, I think, about his gift set is this concept of duality, where on one hand he has this exuberant confidence and swagger and leadership precision, but the duality part of it is on the other side. He carries this servant, like humility, genuine quality, and that part is what allows him to relate so well to the guys and keep them engaged in the mission. And I think it's important to have both. If you just go down this road, maybe you're going to look weak and not a good leader. But if you go just down this road, you'll be prideful and arrogant, and you'll lose people. His ability to strike a chord in the middle is truly a special gift.
Morning, JJ, Rob. One for each of you. I'll start with JJ. In terms of how you were able to adapt to the team that you had this season, looking forward, like what areas of improvement do you see for the team that you envision coaching for next season?
Like, how can we be better next year?
Yeah.
We clearly need to have a better overall season defensively. I think we had flashes of that. I have said this numerous times. I think our improvement defensively is a big credit to our staff. Bob and Greg, and the work they did in film and in walkthroughs. Playing 48 straight games without a 2-day break and not being able to practice is insanity, and trying to get better in the midst of that is a real challenge. And both those guys did a great job. But we got to be better defensively, and certainly can talk about personnel, but we're going to assess as a staff what we did well, what we did not do well, and figure out ways to be better there. And I think Luke is a great example. He's a guy that can dribble, pass, and shoot. And I think because of injuries, there were times that we didn't have enough of that. We got to be better at being able to dribble, pass, and shoot. I know that sounds simple, but that's just the reality.
Thank you, JJ. And Rob, you mentioned you have a first-round pick, and you already have a core of young guys with Adu and Bronny and Chris Mannion, Dalton, Nick Smith. Where are you assessing your current youth core, and how are you trying to add, what traits are you looking for as far as adding to that youth core?
That's a great question. I mean, I think in terms of traits for our core, we really want that to line up with Coach and sort of his vision for the overall roster. And I think we've again had discussions around the archetype of guy, game processors, highly competitive basketball IQ, team first players. So continuing to find young players and develop the mindset is the first thing, getting the right players with the right mindset, and then developing the basketball side. And I'm excited to get on a plane later this afternoon. All of our scouts are in Chicago at the Combine. We'll start interviewing 20-some players for that 25th pick, and then start bringing them into our building. Other members of our front office are already there. So that work is going on now, and identifying the next player to add to that core.
Rob, over here. When you look around some of the teams that are either ascending or still in the playoffs, Thunder, Spurs, Pistons, they're built a lot through the draft, cost control players, a longer runway. This franchise tends to be much more win now, immediacy. What makes you confident that approach can still work given the way the landscape may be changing.
Yeah. I mean, I guess maybe a question about the team. So you mentioned Detroit, San Antonio, OKC. What did those teams have to go through to build through the draft, in your opinion?
Some losses and rebuilding.
Yeah, like multiple seasons of, losses. And that is just not part of our infrastructure here. As much as some of us might want it to be that way, it's not the Lakers way. We have to find sustained excellence. And so it does create, at times, a thread the needle where you've got to find a way to have championship rosters every year. I will say that the hardest thing to do to get to that point is to have a young, transformative player that can carry you in the playoffs all the way to a championship. That's the hardest thing to get. You can lose 5 years in a row and get 5 top 5 picks and come out of it without that player. It's really hard, but we were able to get that in Luka, so that part of the puzzle is solved, and we're grateful for that. Now it's just a matter of putting in all the other pieces around that to be able to get to the end.
Hey JJ and Rob, back here. Questions for Rob. You mentioned that you would love to have the big three back together again, and you also mentioned the need to get younger and faster and deeper. Given salary demands and restrictions, do you believe those two goals can be done in conjunction with one another?
Absolutely. I mean, there's 15 roster spots. So if you mention 3 players, that leaves you with 12 others to build around. There's the 3 two-way spots, and we've seen even two-way players emerge and make a difference in regular season wins. So we have enough tools in our tool chest to build out a team for sure. And JJ and I have a lot of confidence in our ability to do that this offseason and to start next fall with a team that we're all super proud of that can get to the end.
Good morning. One each for JJ and Rob. And for JJ, Rui has grown as a shooter, as you mentioned. But outside of shooting, which area did you see the most growth?
Well, I think he ended up with a couple assists this year, right, Bill? Yeah. Now, Rui is. I feel like with Rui, he's the shooting piece is like a transformative. Rob used the word transform. It's a transformative development for him as a player. It allows him to be an uber efficient scorer. It allows him to create gravity for his teammates. It's hard to take him off the floor. I mentioned at the end of the season, sort of the win pace we were on in the games that he played. His shooting elevates everyone else around him. The other areas of growth, finishing, because he was a mid-range shooter when we got him. So it's finishing, it's decision making, it's decisiveness and closeouts. I think he made progress in all those areas. I think defensively understanding our schemes, it was another year of growth for him as well.
And for Rob, Rui has shown that he can play in the playoffs, he can rise in the playoffs. Did that change your plan for this summer for Rui?
Incredibly proud of what Rui accomplished for us in the playoffs and what he's done also in playoffs before this year. He, in terms of your question about his growth and development here, I'll take the sort of non-basketball court stuff in Rui, just his overall professionalism and his approach, his mindset approach. From the time I traded for him when he came from the Wizards, Rui has gotten incredibly comfortable here, comfortable with the coaches and the front office and our systems. And what I've seen in that, once Rui gets to a point of trust and comfort, then he grows exponentially with his production on the court. And that's what I've noticed most about him is just there's a trust factor and a comfort level that allows him to be the highest version of himself. And that's really important to keep those pieces. And credit to Rui and just how he's grown as a human.
Thanks, Rob. Just to follow up Dan's question earlier, you mentioned the hiring process to build out the front office. We're aware that Tony Bennett was hired as a draft consultant, I believe. Have there been any other hires that you could share with us? And could you also specifically say what positions you're looking to fill?
Yeah, great question. Tony Bennett has been an invaluable addition to sort of our draft and scouting processes. What he built at UVA was really, really special. Tony has said he never, ever wants to coach again. That chapter in his life is 100% over. But having sort of the mind of a builder and a coach in our draft department with our scouts has been incredibly special just to see that interaction. So what an addition. We don't list and won't start the precedent of listing of all the hires we do within data and strategy and analytics and scouting and medical scouting. We've made numerous hires already that just aren't ones that we publicly disclose, but there's been a build out going on. The two biggest positions that I mentioned in my answer to Dan is we will hire 2 assistant general managers. That's the plan. One of those general managers would be over sort of player draft and evaluation processes. That's pro scouting, draft scouting, player development. The other AGM would be more on the strategy side, which is cap, analytics, and data. And again, it's not that we've had holes in those places. We've got a great team of people that works incredibly hard. It's just we want to add more to that. And for both those AGM positions, we have started a wide search and have begun interviews, but haven't hired out either of those.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.